Welcome back to Between the Lines. In this last segment, as we talk about this individual, W.W. Prescott, with Dr. Gilbert Valentine, we have to ask what kind of character traits he had to be so tenacious and driven at his time when he didn't have the advantage of computers, he didn't have the advantage of telephones. I mean, there's so many luxuries that we have, so-called today, that he didn't have the opportunity to utilize, and therefore, you know, he obviously was inhibited by movement and time and rapid connection with people who held like ideas. So, I mean, this man had to be really driven as well as patient.
I think as an individual, he was totally committed to his Lord and committed to the cause of Christ. So he gave all that he was and all that he had. He had a good income and a good inheritance, and he gave that to the church as well in various.
Now, where did the inheritance come from?
His father had established a significant industry up in New England. In fact, his brother was also involved in a large industry, household chemicals and polishes and that kind of thing. So that was part of his commitment, his personal commitment.
He didn't have to work for money. He truly was working for the cause.
Didn't have to, but he did. He gave himself, to the cause.
I have to admit, I did ask on the break, off camera, if you found any scandal as you were studying Prescott.
No scandals,
which
really.
I think is a wonderful testimony of his character, because as you were saying, he was very devoted and upstanding, and you spent hours and months researching his life, and it seems like people really respected him.
They did. Not all people respected him. There were some who thought that he was a little edgy in his theology. Some thought that he was wanting to change things a little too much. And he did refocus the church, focusing it on Christ. But he had his critics, and some of those were fairly hostile. So in some respects he had a hard time with some of his critics. And yet the leader of the church, A.G. Daniels, who was a very close colleague of Prescott, thought that he was one of the most gifted individuals the church had.
Were those edgy teachings, were they later accepted as
yes, they're part and parcel of what we accept in the church.
So he really was a visionary.
Yeah.
Well, we're using a term edgy between us, but what are we really talking about when we say edgy?
Edgy at the time.
Edgy at the time, yes.
Right.
Well, he wanted to reinterpret a passage in the book of Daniel that gave it a much more clear Christocentric focus, and others thought that he shouldn't be doing that. But he worked carefully with his colleagues and shared the idea. But, sometimes ideas change slowly. And so
what passage was that?
This was a passage that concerned the phrase "the daily" in Daniel 8:14. So it was close to the heart of things for the Adventist Church. But it is what's accepted as part of the church's understanding of how that passage should be read today. But in his day, it was a little cause for controversy. So in that sense, some may have thought it was scandalous, but he was committed really to the very core.
Right, it was very Christ-centered, even though it was considered edgy at the time.
Yes.
Well, he seems like a very devoted man, of course, and one great thing about studying the lives of those men and women who've gone before us is that we can learn from them. What do you think we can learn most, primarily, from the life of W.W. Prescott?
For me, what comes through very clearly is his placing importance on a very close personal relationship with Jesus. Being a Christian wasn't a formality, it wasn't observing routines and rituals, it was a very close personal relationship. Faith was very real to him, and that's been a constant inspiration to me. And then with that commitment of faith that held him anchored at the centre, a commitment to service that took him to many different places and helped him work with many different people, that helped him leave a lasting legacy to the church. And I think if we could capture that from Prescott,
we
his
would all
life
do
would
well.
have
We
been
could
Sure.
change the world.
Really
Yeah,
valuable.
there's no
Sure.
question. I
Indeed.
want to ask this question because of the grief that he experienced in his life.
Yes.
Did he leave any letters, or is there any correspondence that remains that give us an insight into how he managed the loss of his son, never being able to see him again,
Yeah.
no burial, just lost?
It hurt him deeply, and he does leave letters that recount the desolation that he felt at first, and how that he just had in faith and trust that God's overall providence would somehow work things out. And he had that hope that kept him focused on the resurrection. But there are an abundance of letters, actually, many, many letters. And so that's why it's a significant book.
How did he have time to write letters when
I
he was
know.
doing all of that?
I know.
Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah.
guess the questions just keep rolling one to the next. You know, I want to thank you for
Yes.
being with us. Thank you
Been a
for
real pleasure.
making the journey from Sydney, Australia to
Yeah.
share the details about this book. Thank you for watching today. And let's capture this one thing that we've heard now from Dr. Valentine about W.W. Prescott, that in the midst of loss and just this sense of desperation that W.W. Prescott had, he held on to God. Hold on to God. He won't let you go.
This program was brought to you by the Hope Channel Network, thanks to the generous support of viewers like you. In the United States and Canada, call 1-888-4-HOPE-TV. That's 888-446-7388.